Internet, CarTube, my loyal 2 million plus subscribers. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Dean. I am the Throttle Cracker. We're going to have a discussion today about the whole manual versus automatic transmission debate. I think this conversation has changed substantially over the last decade or so. This used to be pretty cut and dried conversation. For most car enthusiasts, you simply had a preference. Back in the days, back in the muscle car days, for which is what I originally lusted after for cars, still do. You essentially had 3-speed automatic transmissions and 4-speed manual transmissions. One wasn't necessarily faster than the other. Certainly if you knew how to drive a manual transmission, you probably were. But it was really just a preference. Automatics were, of course, going to be more consistent, faster on a racetrack, on a drag strip, which everything was about drag racing back then. But things have changed a lot. Even the term automatic transmission is not what it used to be. It's now, it can mean it's an automatically shifted manual transmission, like a dual clutch, or a little bit older would be like a single clutch. But it is a manual transmission. It has a clutch. You don't get to have a clutch pedal, but it doesn't have the sloppiness and the time absorbing shift mechanisms that old automatic transmissions actually have. Old automatic transmission meaning it has a torque converter. There are still torque converter equipped automatic transmissions all over the place. Some of the quickest straight line cars in the world are equipped with torque converter automatic transmissions. Now, for those of you who do watch the channel, you know I recently had my first Porsche experience, and that Porsche 718 Spyder RS was equipped with a PDK. Manual transmission is not an option in the cars. It does not fit. It's a mid-engine Porsche. They don't have a mid-engine manual transmission that fits that application, so you get a PDK. That being said, PDK is essentially, would be considered by most, the benchmark of how a automatically shifted, or a sequential transmission is another term for them, but it is a manual transmission. It's actually, there are two transmissions with two clutches, and the computer sort of shifts in and out of one transmission to the other. Not really important. But it's come from, at one point, being a preference in the drive to being which one is more performance oriented and capable. Now it's gone back to, again, being a preference. Technology now has totally, a dual clutch transmission is going to shift multitudes quicker than any manual transmission can. The number of gears are equal to or more than manual transmissions are. But are they more fun? Yes, they're faster. And this is sort of this whole generation of cars, the last several generations of cars has come about. And the generation of car buyers is, it's all about numbers, right? How much horsepower? How quick does it do 60? How quickly can it shift gears? I mean, none of those things are important or relative to actually driving the car, but it's all come down to numbers now. So yes, a sequential shifted transmission is going to be faster. But is a manual more fun? Back in the day, it was a different, like in terms of the performance things, back in the day, when you had like a 4-speed in your muscle car, it wasn't just about how quick, and it still isn't. It's just not about how quickly you can shift. back then it was like going to battle. It was like engaging in a gunfight. If you were fast with your stick shift and your left foot, you were a gunslinger. And people knew it. You were marked. So everybody else that thought they had a quick left foot was after you. And keep in mind, this is back when street racing was more, it was less dangerous. There was more of it around. Cars weren't doing 180 miles an hour fairly easily like they do now. Fast cars of the day were built for quarter mile drag racing. They topped out at the 1,300 foot mark. They didn't, they weren't intended to accelerate for another half a mile. It was a gun fight. And even to the point where Chrysler very famously made a pistol grip shifter. It was a pistol grip. So you could grab onto that. Actually have one right here. Hang on. Looked cool as hell on a car. Worked well on a drag strip. Kind of funny, in my opinion, for street driving. So that's a Hurst pistol grip shifter that you would see. This one came out of a CUDA, Challenger CUDA. This one's going back into a brand new Challenger. So you were a gunslinger. It was a mark of honor. You were a cooler guy. And that's really all there is to it. And in some extent, you're a cooler guy in your cool car if you can smash gears faster than somebody else can smash gears. If you can smash the shit out of your 6-speed Camaro and stay door to door with the guy next to you in his goofy 10-speed Camaro, you're a gunslinger. He's just pushing the gas pedal. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, there's a mystique to it. And especially back in the day it was so much different. When you looked into it, when you look into a car, a cool car on the street, whatever, old muscle car, new exotic, whatever, when you look in that window and you see a shifter sticking up out of the console that is obviously a manual transmission shifter, it's a cooler car automatically. Am I wrong? It's more exciting automatically. Am I wrong? I don't think so. I prefer my manual transmissions. And prime example of what I mean of going into battle and being a gunslinger. Here's a legend, Grumpy Jenkins. Watch this. Watch the elbow. Cigar. Wasn't pushing a button. He was doing everything. There is no computer in those old cars, and if you want your manual transmission car to go fast today, you got to turn off all the traction control and shit, and you got to be a gunslinger. You got to be a man about things. You got to make it work. Another prime example, even crazier, Dick Landy. A legend.
Now, moving out on the pad, ladies and gentlemen, the pro stockers of Dick Landy, Sherman Oaks, California, up against Jim Baker, Anaheim, California. Baker driving a Chevrolet, Landy a Dodge. Landy now moving away, he wins it. Landy going away.
Are those cars as fast as modern dual clutch equipped supercars? Because back in the day that was a supercar. That Camaro, those Hemi Challengers that you watched, those were 10-second supercars. Build a car for 10 seconds, it's still a supercar. But you can buy a Lamborghini, it'll do 10 seconds with a little bit of tweaking. But this is what you get. Now, you go from manly, badass, cigar smoking gunslinger to this shit. you know what I mean? Like, yes, that car is fast. It's expensive. It's super duper capable. But actually, you know what's funny? Let's watch this again. Because the guy actually misses the first shift down. He misses the paddle. That's funny. Watch this. He misses the paddle. You can see it on the second run through clearly. Watch this. Right? Okay. Now, none of those old cars with manual transmissions were made to go around a corner. Most cars you can buy now will absolutely chew up a corner. Even your entry-level sporty offerings from just about every dealership in the planet will go around a corner way better than an old Camaro or an old Mustang or Challenger or whatever. Easily. Now, that being said, here comes the difference. Here is where my epiphany and opinion comes from. That 917, that Porsche guys, that 718 I was driving, that RS I was driving, we were driving and we were engaged in some sporty back road driving. As mentioned, PDK equipped, my first time, more than a little impressed at the way it operates and its programming. It is flawless. It obviously shifts insanely fast, smoothly, but more importantly, you don't have to take your hands off of the wheel to shift. When you're in a corner in a car that's that capable, at the speeds that car is capable of, with the level of grip that car is capable of generating, and more importantly, capable of losing, you don't really want to, I did not want to take my hands off the steering wheel. I wasn't absolutely racing the thing, but I mean, for a $250,000 Porsche, at 5/10 is hauling ass. Big time. Not only did I not want to lift my hands off the steering wheel, I certainly didn't want to unplant my left foot from the dead pedal that's keeping me in my seat. Some of those you may not even realize that's what your dead pedal is for, kids, to push you back into your seat so you can use your steering wheel to gently drive and not hang on to and keep you in position. It wasn't about how fun it was. It wasn't about how much of a gunslinger you need to be with the thing. It was about the cornering capability. This conversation has gone from straight line preference and performance and numbers achievable to how the transmission works in a corner. Would that RS have been any more fun with a manual transmission? Fuck, I genuinely don't think so. Granted, there are things you cannot do with a dual clutch transmission from anybody. I'm like, if I wanted to, I mean, my Challenger in the driveway, my Super behind me, they're both V8 manual transmission cars. Either of them, if I want to, just to be a total hot rod fucking show off from a dead stop, I can put it in second gear, tack the thing up, bounce it off the rev limiter, and dump the clutch and do a burnout for a block or two long. No problem. I don't know of any of these dual clutch cars that you can do that type of shit with, or even just intimidate the car next to you at the red light or the staging lane or whatever. You can't wind the shit out of your motor. You can't zing the engine and sort of bump up against the clutch and fucking do any of that. You know what I mean? Maybe you don't know what I mean. Little dry hops, little dry launches, like cleaning off your tires, or even, like I say, just intimidating the guy next to you in their car. You can't even do that. I've watched exotics at exotic cars at car shows almost run into other cars because they're trying to do things like little fucking burnout from a dead stop. You can't, or even applying the brake and the throttle at the same time in some of these cars. Fucking computer just shits the bed. It doesn't want to acknowledge something that you're doing unless it's a specific mode, but you just don't have complete control, same as you do in a manual transmission. But once again, this doesn't affect anything other than from a dead stop going straight. I assume with these, when you, like, I don't know if that RS, if you turn the traction control right on and just fucking mat it from a dead stop, will it boil the tires through? It's only rear drive. Will it boil the tires through 3 gears like a 500 horsepower car should? I don't know if it'll do that. I would certainly love to try. If it was mine, I would totally try that shit. If it was a manual transmission, I would be doing that shit for sure. There's nothing happier than getting a little waggly tail, smashing another gear and getting a little waggly tail out of the back of your car. We all know that pleasure. Do modern PDKs and other dual clutch type of cars do that? In that terms of fun, I don't think it's the same. Clutch kick in the car in a corner to stick the rear end out of it, like in your, like for your like drift style shit. I don't think I don't think there's a lot of dual clutch transmissions in the whole drift genre of racing. I guess they do consider it racing. But the conversation has changed for sure. One thing that I am glad about the whole transmission world is the DCT thing has died. Thank God. They're all horrible. I don't care what anybody says. I haven't driven the Hyundai or the DCT. I guess it's fairly good according to some of the reviewers. That's an automatic transmission to me. That's your old school slush box automatic. Those have never been all that much fun. They're very smooth and buttery soft and very luxurious to drive. That's where they have their place. But modern day, it's a much different conversation. And what do you guys think? There was some comments about the transmission in the previous videos on that RS that I made. Curious what you think. Have any of you recently had your your first experience with a performance dual clutch transmission? What'd you think? Or even better, have you recently had your first experience with a manual transmission? You haven't lived until you have driven a V8 with a manual transmission, preferably an older style one, like a carbureted a big block V8 with like 500 pounds of torque, a manual 4-speed transmission, external linkage, and a mechanical clutch. It's another thing, you guys, when you're watching those old school drag racers, that is an externally shifted transmission. There are no perfectly synchronized rods and shit inside the transmission operating shift forks. It's all set up manually on the outside of the transmission with simple levers and rods. The clutch linkage is not hydraulic, it's mechanical. Half of it is attached to the chassis of the car, the other half is attached to the transmission. If anything moves, your shifter moves with it. The way it responds moves with, changes as it moves. Grumpy Jenkins' left leg is twice as big as his right one because the clutches involved in operating a car of that capability back then were just brutal. The pressure plates were just, they weren't springs. They were sort of bending a plate of steel just enough to engage a gear. Shifting a car from that vintage that quickly is a feat. It is a feat. Not many people can do it. And here's my last comment for the newer generation, we're going to go out on this one. A quick word on what they call flat foot shifting. Is your car equipped with flat foot shifting? Here's a secret. Every single manual transmission car in the world is equipped with flat foot shifting. You just don't take your foot off the throttle when you're shifting gears. That's been that way for like 80 fucking years. I'm not sure why you would take your foot off. If you were drag racing and you were going for balls out, you plant the throttle, you got a rev limiter, smash a gear, smash a gear, smash a gear, foot stays on the floor. That's just how it is. That's how it's always been. You just sort of tap the clutch pedal a little bit. Bash that fucking lever. Hang on for dear life. This doesn't ever gonna do it for me. Missed. You know, I'm sorry, there's just no way that is ever going to be as entertaining and as cool as this.
Now, moving out on the pad, ladies and gentlemen, the pro stockers of Dick Landy, Sherman Oaks, California, up against Jim Baker, Anaheim, California. Baker driving a Chevrolet, Landy a Dodge.